this panel, Black Feminism and the Black Lives Matter movement, Barbara Smith, Reina Gossett, and Charlene Carruthers. It sounds like people know these three people already, right? So I'm going to, though, for those of you who may not know, Barbara Smith has been breaking ground as a Black feminist, a lesbian, a writer, a publisher, a teacher, an elected official. In 4 decades, Barbara founded publishing houses and collectives organized around reproductive rights and prison reform, and is truly one of the founders of Black Feminism. Woo! Charlene Carruthers.
Hey,
Woo! And Charlene Carruthers is a Black queer feminist community organizer. Currently, Charlene is National Director for Black Youth Project 100. And serves on the board of SONG.
Sister song. Not song. Yeah.
And then last but never least, Reina Gossett. Reina has worked for the Sylvia Romero Law Project and was awarded a George Soros Fellowship to work with LGBT people navigating the criminal justice system. She is also the co-writer and co-director of Happy Birthday, Marsha. Yes, it is indeed my great pleasure to introduce you to our keynote panel, Black Feminism and the Movement of Black Lives. Oh, and then there's me. My name, again, is Stacy Long Simmons. I'm Director of Public Policy and Government Affairs here at the Task Force. Oh, you don't have any water?
You need one?
Black!
Black.
That's right.
Those are our
right.
folks. They don't.
So, no, that's
anyway.
right.
Okay.
Listen, we designed this panel to be a conversation amongst us. And so even though I'm moderator, I'm really here to just keep things going, basically to keep us on time. So I would like to get us started with a basic question. You know, like, we should not assume that people all share the same definitions. And one of the definitions that I think it'd be really interesting to explore is really, what is Black feminism?
So when we started talking about Black feminism in the early 1970s, we were trying to assert that Black women had a right to define their own political destiny and their own political issues. This did not get us much love, I have to say. Many people who created what we think of as a modern Black feminist movement were also lesbians. We generally were either actually poor or working class or identified as such. And we just wanted to make a space for ourselves in this world. we saw that we had to talk about all the kinds of oppressions that affected our lives, not just one. And we definitely had a critique and were reacting to the single-issued politics of the white women's movement, the bourgeois white women's movement. We were also critical of the black movement. By that time, it was black nationalism and black power, not civil rights, of course inflected by, but it had moved on to another stage. And those politics were generally male-defined. And we also were critical of the single-issued focus of the new gay liberation movement. So we were just trying, as I said, to carve out a place for ourselves, but we also understood that if we were successful and if we were able to do that, then we would have carved out a space for every other kind of individual, every other kind. Because even though we did not necessarily encompass every single identity, we had an analysis and a practice that said that wherever you came from, be you. I love that. That works for me. That kind of mentality, that kind of consciousness, that kind of perspective, be you. We believed that, and we knew that if we could, as I said, get a foothold and get this rolling, that it would make space and revolution for everybody.
That's right.
So there has been, oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think I could follow one of the founders of Black Feminism in answering that question.
Yeah, please.
Well, I can't say anything. I think the thing that I think about, and when I think about Black feminism, is this moment of just heightened violence for Black women who are trans. The highest documented homicides ever happened this past year, and the year before was the highest before that. And so when I think about Black feminism, I think about how we cannot get rid of gender norms and transphobia and the gender binary without getting rid of everything else that co-constitutes it, which is exactly what you were saying, right? We can't afford to take in this, what I think is like an assimilationist push, that transphobia can happen without addressing anti-Black racism, right? Or that transphobia, we can get rid of transphobia without addressing the criminalization of sex work, or the criminalization of HIV, right, and AIDS. So yeah, thank you.
For me, so how I even came into Black feminism is not even through the words of Black feminism. It's through my mother, through learning the history of Black women like Harriet Tubman and Audre Lorde and Dr. Dorothy Height. Without all of this extra language that we learn, shout out to Kim Crenshaw for intersectionality. But as we know, if we look at just the Combahee River Collective Statement and what it says, what you wrote about interlocking oppressions.
Exactly.
This idea that shouldn't be radical, that Black women are many things, and that the ways that we are impacted by power, there are so many ways that we experience oppressive power. And on the other hand, Black feminism is a way for us to build collective power that is absolutely rooted in a critical analysis of anti-Black racism and patriarchy, but with the understanding that Claudia Jones said that she's a Black woman communist, and she would talk about, if Black women were to be free, then all people would be free, right? But I think we gotta actually push that, right? We gotta even push how we think about what it means to be a Black woman. I think Black feminism requires us to expand how we think of womanhood, outside of binaries and
That's right.
all that good stuff, that language that people in this room know. But essentially this idea that we should all be able to live within our full dignity, right? And I believe that there are so many issues that are Black feminist issues. The occupation of Palestine is a Black feminist issue, right?
Yes.
Because what is happening due to the Israeli occupation, there have been scores of reports of the sterilization of women from East Africa. That is a Black feminist issue.
That's right.
Right? And so Black feminism at its core opens up so many possibilities and so many conversations. And I think it can just blow your mind if you dive deep into Black feminism. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to invite us to really have a conversation, right? So like, don't look at me after the last question gets answered, because I have some things I want to lift up that I heard, but there's so much there. And there's two things that came to my mind as you were all talking. One was the disparity and the way in which when something happens to us, something happens to our bodies, and I'm thinking specifically about Sandra Bland, there does not appear to be any caring or any sort, it's just like, oh, whatever. We're so disposable in society until we are being appropriated or exploited, right? Everybody wants a booty. Everybody wants thick lips. Everybody wants our fashion sense. Everybody, all those things, right? But it doesn't get to the reality, which is we're no longer picking cotton, but we are still subjugated, exploited, ripped off, completely underpaid, undervalued, so many different things that I can sort of think about in terms of the workplace. I thank Claudia so much for sharing her story in terms of how one side of the picture is you are a person who is working, you don't know if you're gonna be able to keep your job or not. You don't have no contract, you have no rights, you have no access to protections. And on the other side, you have a job with benefits and your kids can actually see you not worried, not stressed, not overworked, not exploited because you've got someplace to go to air your grievance if something does happen. So I said a lot, but I really want us to, dig in. We have this time on the stage, we have this moment. I feel the energy in the audience, like people really, really want us to take the time. So in particular, now that we've sort of thrown out some of these things, can we talk about how things have sort of evolved and brought us to current day Black Lives Matter movement and some of the parallels?
I just want to, I think about, for me, when I think about that question, I think about Marsha P. Johnson, right, who was a Black trans woman, and I'm coming from New York, and I'm just gonna that's the history and the legacies I'm inheriting, of New York City. So Marsha P. Johnson was a Black trans woman. She was one of the first people to resist the police at the Stonewall riots in 1969. And so it was a really powerful moment. And the following year, to commemorate her actions and the actions of other people, folks organized, and maybe people in the room were there, folks organized the first Christopher Street Liberation Day, right? And it started on purpose at the Women's House of Detention Center in order to connect the mass incarceration of Black people. It was no coincidence that members of the Black Panther Party were incarcerated in the House of Detention Center. When the Christopher Street Liberation Day march arrived there chanting, "Free our sisters, free ourselves." And they did that because they knew it was really important to make those kinds of connections, right, between anti-Black racism, police violence, state violence, and the policing of queer and trans people in our community. And I think that's so powerful, right, where they knew that there couldn't be pride for some of us unless there was liberation for all of us, right? And that's one of the things that I think so many of us are really responding to right now, is that in this moment, there's such a push. There's I would phrase it, as a white, gay, assimilationist push to think about single issues rather than about liberation for all of us.
Yeah. Even just how we talk about Black feminism and the history and who made it, folks, in my experience, people have not marked Marsha P. Johnson's activism, her work, the moment in which she popped off the LGBTQ rights movement in so many ways as a Black feminist moment.
Yeah.
That is a Black feminist moment, whether she identified as a Black feminist or not, right? Because it was absolutely intersectional. They saw the connections between many experiences of oppression. And so what we are seeing in this moment, I believe, is an insistence and just a breaking of the traditional narratives of what Black liberation should look like, who should be visible and who should be at the forefront. Because it can't just be you, Reina, talking about Marsha P, you know? It can't just be Black trans women talking about what's happening to Black trans women. That's not Black feminism. It can't be it. We actually have to do a lot better. Not just a lot better, we have to do better, just period. And that requires us to have really uncomfortable conversations, necessary conversations, and sometimes, people's feelings might be hurt, but it's necessary because folks' lives are on the line.
That's right.
Right? And it's real.
That's right.
It's very real.
Well, as the only person in this discussion right here, although I know there are people in the audience who can share what I am going to say, as the only person right here who actually lived through Jim Crow, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It is heartbreaking to me when Michael Brown was murdered in Ferguson, and the days of people speaking out, protesting, civil unrest in the face of a callous and unlawful, I'll try to be nice, unlawful police state. When I was watching that, I was going to say criminal, but okay. I said unlawful instead. But when I was watching that, and it was the summer, it was a late summer, and that's when things like that used to happen back in the 60s, and I thought, God, this is so similar. It is so similar. And here I am, an official senior citizen, and my people are still out in the streets, and my people are still being slaughtered, shot down like dogs. The Tamir Rice situation, because there are countless ones, many of which we don't even know about, but the Tamir Rice one particularly gets to me because I'm from Cleveland. I was born in Cleveland, and it's just so unspeakable. And they can't find fault. They can't find anything about shooting a 12-year-old 2 seconds before the car even started. The police car hadn't even stopped rolling, and they're slaughtering him. Be that as it may, I take a huge amount of just inspiration and hope from Black Lives Matter because it's incisive and it's brilliant and it is inclusive. It encompasses so many of the things that we wish to see in the best organizing. The fact that we're having this conversation here at Creating Change, how many Creating Changes have I gone to? I haven't come in a long time, but I was there at the creation of Creating Change, pretty near. And the fact that we can have this conversation in a LGBTQ context, that's huge. That's really huge. And that's why you got me out of Albany, because, I don't leave. This is the farthest I've been from Albany in a number of years, because I will go somewhere in the Northeast, but I will not. Yeah, so here I am, because I wanted to meet these sisters, and I wanted to have this chance to meet you and to have this dialogue.
Thank you.
But as always, for people involved in struggle, we are always on an edge where it can go one way or another. And that means that those of us who are alert to struggle and to justice, we have to always be examining and figuring out, okay, what do we do next and which way do we go? It's, as one of my dear sisters in Combahee said, Demeter Frazier said, this didn't get into the statement, but it's one of my favorite quotes. This is not a mix, maybe it did. This is not a mixed cake. We have got to make this up from scratch.
Yes.
That's what she said. So that's a kind of attitude and the spirit with which I think we need to go forward.
I think that's so right. Did I cut you off?
No, go ahead.
I think it's about looking at the root, right? It's about looking at root causes. It's about looking at underpinning logics that aren't about our liberation, right? I think that's why so many of us are just extremely disheartened about the invitation to local law enforcement in general, and ICE this year, because to me, Black feminism is not about making police and prisons gay-friendly. It's not about making ICE gay-friendly. And it's certainly not about making a military or a colonial occupation of indigenous people in US or in Palestine gay-friendly. And so many of us are just totally distraught that that would be something that could ever happen in a queer liberationist movement, and it makes us ask ourselves, is this a queer liberationist movement? And if it's not, what do we need to do about that?
Yeah. So to that point, I think about CeCe McDonald, the dope,
Yes.
amazing CeCe McDonald.
Yes. Originally from Chicago.
Yes, CeCe is from Chicago. For folks who don't know, it's just a lot of greatness that comes out of the city. And so, one thing that I recently read an interview that she did, and CeCe, I've seen her say this in many places, that prisons aren't safe for anybody, right? And if you don't know CeCe McDonald's story, I mean, you should read actually her words, and can explain it better than I can. But I think what's important is that someone who was incarcerated or put in a cage after defending herself, right, refused several things. Refused to fight to be moved to a different facility under the belief that there was no exceptionalism, that she shouldn't be treated differently because prisons weren't safe for anybody,
Yeah.
who refused to give up, who organized and had support with people from the inside and the outside. And this idea that it's not just about making prisons more safe or more trans-friendly or more queer-friendly, but actually this idea that prisons should not exist. Period.
There's that.
Right?
That's right.
Right? And that we can live in a world where prisons don't exist, where police don't exist,
That's right.
and where we deal with harm and conflict in our communities in a completely different way, right? And one thing that I have to name in this space is that one thing that we've dealt with in our organization, and what we're dealing with right now in our organization, is the silence that happens when violence happens within our own communities, all right? Particularly as it relates to sexual violence. And the difficult, the difficult and the heart-wrenching struggle that when you commit to Black queer feminist values, that you actually have to struggle with and not throw things underneath the bus or the carpet, right?
Yes.
And name when what you don't know, and go to people who do know way more than you know. And we have a responsibility to actually put our values into practice and struggle with that and not be perfect, right? And perfection isn't the goal, but integrity to our values is, and accountability is. And so, I'm all about us struggling to create a world where we don't just tear down the prisons and the police, but we build up something that's restorative and transformative.
Dismantle and grow.
Yeah.
Charlene, I want to pick up where you left on that, because one of the things that I struggle with personally is, what do you do when you yourself have been the victim of some type of violence? You've lost a loved one, or you yourself have been assaulted. Mm-hmm. The natural, air quotes, inclination is to want justice and accountability. And so what my mind does is, what do you do? How do you be in relationship with there's a member of your community who, in my instance, was the next door neighbor, and I wanted lots of things to happen to that individual who did harm to my loved one. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about getting rid of the prisons and offering alternatives to police, I need something right now for the people who I know are getting gunned down, stabbed, whatever sexually assaulted, whatever it is, because just because. So it's a
that's
provocative point, and I really
No.
want to hear more about
Yeah, and I can be real quick.
that piece.
Yeah, so right now, on 35th and Michigan, at the Chicago Police Department headquarters, there are people at the Police Review Board hearing who are calling for the firing of Officer Dante Servin, who killed Rekia Boyd. She was a young black woman, right? And he was indicted. He had charges of manslaughter, and I sat next to Miss Angela, who was Rekia's mom, in the courtroom. And one of the things she said I think is really important, is she said they never talk about the girls and the women. They only talk about the men and the boys. They don't ever talk about our daughters who are slain by police officers. And so that family had to sit in that courtroom day after day. They had to sit with the reality that their daughter, their sister was taken away. That system will never give them justice. That system will never bring Rekia back. And it is never my place or anybody's place to tell a family what they should want, right? Or what they should fight for, right? And it is our place, I believe, to support the family. And to be there in any way that they want us to be there or they don't want us to be there, just to be clear about that. And so there are people still harming people. The prisons have some of the people who harm some of the people, and there's a lot of people who aren't in prisons, period. And so if we're going to get serious about about dealing with the problems we have in our communities and not just putting people in cages, there has to be an alternative to prisons. There has to be an alternative to policing if we're going to be serious about that, because we can put Dante Servin in prison. We can put Daniel Holtzclaw's going to prison for however many years, right? And tomorrow, a black person will be killed by a police officer. Tomorrow, somebody is going to be a victim or a survivor of some type of violence. And so when is that going to stop? And prisons, we've had them for quite some time. Police and prisons have not always existed, right? And they've been built on the backs of black people, right? So they're not an absolute. So why not dream of something different, right? Where people are actually able to deal with what has happened in their lives.
May I ask, did you say that police have not always existed? Is that what you said?
No, the police have not always existed. If we look at the history of policing in America, they are rooted in slave patrols.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Right.
So,
And
like, their existence and relationship to the history of people of African heritage is like this.
It's like this.
Yeah, it
and
is.
we got to break that. We have to completely break that apart.
Yeah, and the thing is, this country's obsession with violence and with guns, I always say, whenever they get into, they always talk about all the other things that those guns represent for them and that the Second Amendment represents for them. What it really represents is their fantasy idea of, like, if I have to get rid of and kill one of them, I will be armed and ready to do so.
Right.
And that's just that. But I just wanted to say about this entire line of conversation, it's not possible to have post-revolutionary solutions in a pre-revolutionary society. So the thing is, we live in a pre-revolutionary society, and we might say that we live far, 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 far back. Yeah, we're not even close. But be that as it may, like, having the long view, the way you get to that post-revolutionary society is that you have vision. So you too are expressing vision for what it should be, and that's how you get to what it is and can be. Right. But it's just, I guess I'm just trying to take that kind of stage, like, because when I was in my 20s, I thought that everything would be solved. By the time I was 30, I really did. All of us did. Solved. S-O-L-V-E-D. Solved. That's what we thought, because we were just like everybody, but we were living in revolutionary times when the whole society, all of U.S. society went upside down, and also globally. It was happening globally. A lot was going on. So we were encouraged. But the thing is that at a certain point we said, oh, well, I guess we're going to be slogging for a lifetime.
Prolonged,
and we made that
protracted
commitment.
struggle.
Yeah, we made that commitment.
I think the thing that I think about is that in terms of harm and violence, the people who are doing the most harm will never be caged in a prison. The people who are doing the most harm are actually running the prisons, they're running the government, they're running ICE, they're occupying the land we're on right now and Palestine, and unfortunately, they're being invited to creating change. So I think that's a really, really intense thing to struggle with, and it takes a bit of a mind frame shift to understand that police and prisons are not built to deal with the real harm that happens in our community. They're about controlling and killing our community. And punishment and exiling people are some of the biggest obstacles to solving harm that is so real in our community.
Yeah, I don't want to forget to say this because I'm in Chicago and I'm inside the Hilton. And I just want to talk about the first time I ever came to Chicago when I was outside of the Hilton. It was 1968, August of 1968. I was over in that park with the 10,000 or so of us who were there protesting what was going on in relationship to the war in Vietnam. That was an intersectional issue, particularly if you were a young black woman like I was, because at the very same time that I was committed enough to come to bad Chicago, to bad old Chicago, because Daley Sr. was in, and we were told, we were warned that what the police were going to be doing to such as us. But that very fact that, as I said, I still made that decision to be here and to witness for peace. Black people in my age group were telling me that stopping the war in Vietnam was a white issue. Right. Do you see what I'm saying? So even before feminism, intersectional politics of like, well, I also happen to notice that a lot of the people over there fighting and dying are young men of color who are living in poverty in this country, and who are they killing?
That's
but
right.
Our brothers and sisters of color in that country.
So, just as folks were telling you that like, the war is not a black feminist or even a black people's issue, I mean, we're being told now, I mean, I'm being told, like, in this moment in Chicago, people are telling us that black LGBTQ issues, or black gay, they don't even say that. Black gay and lesbian issues are not black issues, right? They're real, you know, and that's not new. That's not new. And in this particular moment where we're calling for the resignation of Mayor Rahm Emanuel, because he gotta go.
Yes.
He gotta go. Where we're calling for the 40% that CPD takes from our public service budget in Chicago, 40% of the city's public service budget, nearly 40%. We're calling for that to change. We are being like pummeled by homophobic and transphobic rhetoric. I mean, and rhetoric that has turned into actual physical violence as well.
Coming from where? Coming from where?
Oh, both.
Name it.
Both coming from, from the police state itself, and then also coming from folks who are in movement spaces, black folks, within movement space, right? And so this whole idea of being told to wait, to get in the background, and all this other foolishness, is unacceptable, right? And we know that we come from a lineage of black folks who have said, that shit is unacceptable, and we will not wait, and we cannot wait, right? And it's like, how dare you like do work in the name of Malcolm X or Martin Luther King Jr., those two black men that folks love to hold up, who were absolutely against the idea of waiting their turn, you know? And so we refuse to wait. Like, we don't have time to wait. Like, our lives are on the line. That's you know, right. Don't be fooled. It's much bigger than Rahm Emanuel. It's bigger than CPD. It runs deep, like the evil and just the violence that exists.
That's right. I mean, it brings me back to that phone call conversation that we were having about interlocking oppression, right? And how that is such a key component of black feminism and of queer black people. And I was speaking to my sibling, Che, who is a brilliant trans femme. Some people know Che. And we were talking about, you know, because there was a call for a boycott of creating change, right? And people feel that energy's in the room, right? People are really, you know, upset about what is going down this year. And Che was talking to me a little bit about how from June Jordan to James Baldwin, the struggle for Palestinian liberation has always been a black feminist issue. It's never not been a black feminist issue. And this idea of having to bring that to black consciousness is actually portrays a kind of anti-black sentiment, right? That we weren't there, but actually it was much more of a, we've always been there, right? And so I really appreciate that framework, right? Of this is the time to claim our resistance and our desire to transform interlocking oppressions.
Having heard the same things that you're talking about, I'm appalled to hear that they're still trotting out that same old ignorance. Some people are always late, you know? They're and have a fragile hold on reality. Because if you look at black liberation struggles of which we are aware, just as you invoked those names, a steady continuum of people, names known and not known, who have fought for justice. I was personally told that black homosexuality would be the death of the race.
Oh.
And I said, this is back in, 78 or something like that at Howard University. And I said to my friends, I said, so they don't know about all these children we're raising, I guess. You know? Death of the race, yeah. Surrounded by children, yes. But be that as it may, we just have to stay firm and stand firm, and we also have to know our history.
That's right.
And to know that we did not invent ourselves and that we are not alone. When we understand that we're on a long continuum of freedom fighters,
Yes.
We can track it back, centuries in this country, millennia, and others. Wherever you wish to start, there's been a steady continuum of freedom fighters of all genders, sexual expressions, sexual orientations, races, classes, you name it, ability/disability, ethnicities, religions, you name it. We're in a continuum. And the thing is, if you understand that you're in that continuum, you do take heart. Because what it means is that you have a lot of sisters, brothers, and others. Do you see what I'm saying? That you know that you're not the only person who thinks that way.
Right.
You find that person back in some unbeknown century, in some other country, who spoke some other language, and who defined themselves totally different from you. And yet, when it came right down to it and the time for it, they stood up for freedom. Right. So that's how you get through. That is how you get through.
I mean, I think that what you're saying is so real. Historical erasure, I feel like, is one of the key violences that many of us are navigating, right? As black trans people, as black women, as black feminists.
Yeah. And could I say something else about the trans movement? 30 years ago, whenever, those of you who were lesbian feminists in the 70s, you don't have to raise your hand, but the thing is, you know how we thought about gender, and you know how we thought about these issues. We were undeveloped in our understandings and in our politics, but I'm proud to say that I was never a separatist and never thought that only one particular gender, conventionally defined on a binary, that one particular gender had a right to freedom and everybody else was an oppressor. Never thought that. And we took some licks for that as well. But as I said, our consciousness, and I'm just really glad to have lived to see that our consciousness and our practice can change around things that we felt very, very uncomfortable about. Going to gay pride parades in Boston, where I lived in the 1970s, which were jubilant, and seeing really men in drag, not necessarily people who define themselves as trans, but feeling uncomfortable because we felt we were being satirized as women. Women were always being put down, belittled, and we thought they're satirizing us. At a certain point in the 1970s, we began to grasp, oh no, that's not what it is at all. And we began to understand that this is just another way of being a full, like a fully realized wonderful human being on the planet, and we didn't have any problems with that. And as I said, that was in the space of 1 decade, starting with like, oh, I don't know, are they making fun of us? Or, I don't know what they think about us. And then like racism came in and other kinds of things too. And then at a certain point, you say, oh no, we're just all in this together, you know? And we were happy about that.
But we still got work to do.
We still have work to do.
We still got a lot of work to do.
That we do.
Like what it means to be in sisterhood with women of various experiences, right? Like we got work to do. I say this, you don't get cookies just because you a cis person who talks about like trans folks. Like you don't do that. You don't get cookies for that. You should not get cookies. I don't get cookies. You don't get cookies for doing what you should be doing in the first place.
I want that T-shirt. You don't get no cookies,
Don't get cookies
just for talking about trans
Right, for
people.
doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
I think this is one thing that Patrice, the way Patrice Cullors put it, for me, it's like Patrice is one of my homegirls. She's a co-founder of Black Lives Matter. And she named that as one of the growing edges that we have for the Black liberation movement, right? And with any growth edge, it ain't comfortable, right? It ain't gonna be comfortable. But there's so much joy, right? When it's a Black movement, a Black liberation movement, and you look around, and it's like all types of expressions of Blackness, like in our entirety, right? You can't even actually put all of that in one room. You can't put Blackness in its entirety in one room because we are everything, and
we always have been,
and then some, So,
Can I say, that's a very scholarly statement.
Oh.
Very scholarly, because it's true.
So I want to put out there, because everybody who's here came to listen and to learn and to have something to take away. And there's one of the things that we all talked about when we were preparing for this, which I want to bring forward. I want us to talk about the self-care piece, about the healing piece, about the sustenance and sustaining, and about the way you love or don't love, or the things that make it possible for you to spend decades committed to the struggle. I'm sorry, you're looking at me with big eyes.
No, I'm so excited.
Good.
Excited about this question.
Good. So if we could, because we have to wrap up shortly, if we could share some of that. I know we need to do another one, right? We need to do another one.
Or transform and continue to transform this space into a Black feminist queer liberation space. That would never invite ICE and stand and is in solidarity with Palestinian struggles and against settler colonialism. I mean, that is really what we're asking for, right?
Actually.
So self-care, one of the reasons that I've been able to stay at it as long as I have is I think because I can see the humor side of almost anything, and humor really helps us to get through some of our lowest and worst moments. I also, and I'm quoting Demita tonight, I guess because I'm in Chicago, and she's from Chicago. Okay. But she talked about how we believe in live revolutionaries, not dead martyrs. That's what she said. And what that meant is that we weren't trying to show somebody something, so that, we wouldn't be here as elders to do the work. We wanted to do decades of work. And that meant going to, going to all kinds of healers, alternative and mainstream. It meant, for me, trying to get enough sleep every night. It makes a big difference. There are just so many little things that you can do for yourself. Being surrounded by people who really have your back and care about you, who are looking out for you. This makes a big difference. And if it's not making you feel good inside and smile inside, then get out of it, because it is not for you. You do not have to be miserable, nor should you be miserable trying to make change. If it's not filling your heart, and at least sometimes you're just laughing, giggling for joy because the shit is just so wrong, you know. And you understand that, and you're with people who do understand that. Then, as I said, get out of it. Find where you can be to work on this lifelong project of revolutionary transformation and still feel whole and good inside.
That's right. I mean, I guess I'm thinking about like the really honest answer, and I think Black feminism calls for honesty, and that's why I've been trying to be extra honest tonight. But I think the honest answer is my like self-care. That it changed a lot in learning from the Disability Justice Collective that has been doing work here for a really long time to transform cultures of ableism and structural forms of ableism and the ideology of eugenics, so that like a certain body should be able to do certain things and our leadership should look a particular kind of way. And as I grappled and began to understand my own relationship to being a disabled person, it really shifted a lot. And I had this idea that I had to be, you know, Katniss Everdeen, right? I had to be kind of like that fearless person who operates in a kind of austere way, that no emotion, right? That is like the way to be a leader. And it really shifted, right? It shifted towards joy. It shifted towards slowing down a lot, making sure things that if our community can't be a part of it, then we're not really doing, quote unquote, the work, right? So we need to ensure ways that that all of us can be there. And so that I think about self-care in kind of that structural way and my own changing relationship to it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is hard. Like, people ask me this question all the time, especially Samantha Masters over there. What is self-care? What does your self-care regimen look like? All the time. And I never have an answer, right? Like, I never have an answer because there are things that I do to help, like, take better care of myself. Like, I cook. Like, I love to cook. I'll go, like, binge grocery store shopping, where I'll go to, like, 5 grocery stores to get a couple bags of things.
I love it.
Like, that's like one of the things I do. And, you know, that's what I do. I'll go to the grocery stores. And I'm really into food, and that's one of the things that continues to bring me joy, being able to, like, feed people and see people smiling. But I'm oftentimes really uncomfortable with how we talk about self-care in movement spaces, yes. Right? Because sometimes self-care is like without accountability or responsibility to the community that you're in. I mean, like, I'm taking a self-care day and I'm just doing it and I'm not telling you about it until it's over with, kind of thing, to just disappearing. Like, people will disappear in community with other folks, right? And for many reasons. They may not feel supported. They may not be supported, right? Not just a feeling. And so I think it's a responsibility of ours to take up community care of each other. And that self-care can't just be the responsibility of individuals. Because this stuff will kill you or try to kill you, or people will try to kill you. Like, every day, as Lucille Clifton said, every day, you know, something has tried to kill me, it has failed. I hope it continues to fail. I really do hope it continues to fail, because folks try it every day. And it requires
no joke.
And it requires a village of people. Janae Taylor tells me this all the time. It requires a village of people to be around you and with you to help you take care of yourself. Yeah.
That's right.
And can I give an example that just happened? So if you got in here earlier, before things started, you saw a different setup on this stage. You saw some high chairs, you know? And I looked at those chairs, I thought, oh my goodness, because I don't sit in high chairs.
That's right.
They're very uncomfortable. There's something called arthritis, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's from wear and tear. And sitting on a chair like that would have just been miserable. But the thing is, when we were talking about the stage setup, I said, oh no, that's what's up there, you know, oh no, you did it because you want people to be able to see us, you know, more easily. And they pointed out that you have these jumbotrons, you know, so you don't really need to see us. But in any event, they changed the chairs, and it was really you sisters who said, no, just have them change the chairs.
Right, that's right.
And that happened. And the thing is, like that, because it's always about, no, you don't have to do it for me. You don't have to do it for me.
Yeah.
But see, that was sisters taking care of a sister. I appreciate
That's
it.
right. So, thank you. Thank you. So, this panel was everything, right? This panel was everything.